So yeah, look, I'm Jez or Jeremy if you want to be formal. Yeah, they're just a couple of things that I've done. But to give you a bit of like real context as to who I am and who I'm here representing. So Wake by Reach is the organisation that I'm here with, and we're the social enterprise of the Reach Foundation, which is an organisation that started 25 years ago in Victoria by two guys. One, Jim Steins, who played AFL football for Melbourne Demons, and others a movie director by the name of Paul Curry. And all that work was purely for young people. And what happened was that Reach's sponsors would see the workshops and be like, shit, can you guys come and do that at our business or at our company, at our organisation? And so then we just sort of realised that, hang on, if we do this sort of stuff, we can charge like adult corporate consultancy rates, and then everything goes back to the workshops with young people, which are done throughout Victoria and New South Wales. So that's who Wake is. So you'll probably hear me refer to it as Wake or Reach, same. I got involved when I was in high school in Reach, and I was not a leader by any stretch of the imagination. I was in year 10, school for me was about girls and footy, and it was a complete accident. My mates were asked to go to the school leadership day, and I didn't want to go because it was the school leadership day. But the next day, or I remember like that night, they all came home and they just wouldn't shut up about how awesome this day was, how they did all these cool things, blah, blah, blah. I just felt like I'd missed out, and I hated that feeling of missing out. The next day, coordinator comes around into my homeroom. He's like, all right, we have another leadership day, who wants to go? And I just chucked my hand up without really thinking too much. I just assumed it was the one that my friends went to. And it was a Reach day. And I didn't know anything about Reach, I'd never heard of it. And the way my coordinator described it didn't really fill me with a lot of confidence. It sounded like a bunch of hippies standing around a campfire, holding hands, singing Kumbaya, which not really my thing. If you're into that, great. Me, no. So I didn't want to go. And one thing got me over the line was that there were going to be 400 people my age there, and I thought, all right, there's got to be some hot single girls there somewhere. So I went basically to pick up and get a day off school. And this day was being held on the other side of the city, massive room, 400 people, everyone sitting in rows like you guys are right now. And I was in the back row, and I was bored shitless. I hated it, didn't want to be there. And my default when I'm in that sort of position is to just be a bit of a smart ass and try and derail things just to amuse myself. And Jim Steins was up on stage running the show, and he's probably like 6'6", 6'8" maybe. I was a big unit. And I was just needling him, just trying to get a reaction. And it got to the point where I knew if I said one more thing to him, he'd crack it on stage. And I thought, that'd be pretty funny. Big, tall Irishman, very famous in Victoria as well. So, you know, that would give me a bit of street cred. And I haven't actually told this story for a while. So it's, looking back on it, it just does not age well at all. Because the moment I decided to push him over the edge, so he was on stage doing like a really like hardcore, deep and meaningful interview with a women's wheelchair tennis player. Yeah. And she was born able-bodied too, and she was away on a school camp. And when she's about 13, 14, so like year 8, year 9, on this school camp, a brick wall collapsed on her. She became paralysed from the waist down. Hardcore story. And she was talking about her life, and there was this weird, well not weird, there was just this really long, intense pause. Jim had asked her a question and she was thinking about it, and everyone in their seats like was hanging off every single word that this woman was saying. So everyone was kind of like leaning forward for her response. And then I broke the silence at the back of the room by screaming at the top of my lungs, "Get a haircut, dickhead!" Which, apart from like, not really making a huge amount of sense, because there was nothing really wrong with her hair. It was brown, it was straight, it was like down to her shoulders. Jim was the only other person on stage. pretty normal hair, short, brown. Don't know. What happened though is, apart from the crickets and tumbleweeds that just appeared in the room, was the people in the front row. They turned their heads. They quickly turned. People in the second row, they did the same thing. Third row, fourth row, fifth row, became like a Mexican wave from the front to the back. Everyone turning their heads. So I'm sitting in the back row freaking out, thinking, how the hell am I going to weasel my way out of this situation? And then just before the row in front of me was about to turn their head, I turned to the kid next to me, who was from a different school, and very loudly, I'm like, I can't believe you said that, man. That woman's in a wheelchair. Grow a heart. And everyone looked at that kid. Jim Steins knew. He gets me up on stage, and I'd been told off at school quite a lot at that point. So I was expecting that to happen. He gets me up on stage, he gives me a microphone, had all these smart-ass comebacks planned in my mind, and he didn't tell me off. And I wasn't expecting that. Completely threw me. He started asking me all these questions about who I was and what I was about, and I wasn't prepared for that. And because I wasn't prepared for that, it was like I forgot how to talk. I started to stutter. I started to like mix up all my words, and it was horrible. Like the people in the room started laughing at me because my stuttering started to it was really bad, and it's not something that I would normally do. And the people in the room, they were losing their minds laughing at me, and I hated that feeling. I was always the one making the jokes. I was never the butt of the joke. I remember sitting back down. It's like, I'm going to beat the crap out of Jim Steins. I'm going to beat the crap out of every other person in this room, fuming. And I was sulking quite badly. But what happened was, after about 10 minutes, I forgot that I was sulking. I got caught up with what was happening, and I found myself being swept up in what they were doing, because what they were doing really struck a chord with me. It was just people having conversations and people being honest and being real and not trying to be a smart ass, not trying to be the clown or the cool guy. People just being themselves. So I put my name down and, been around Reach ever since. Do a lot of work outside of Reach. I work in footy, as was mentioned there, but now I work in our adult space. So I do a lot of our adult workshops and facilitation. And yeah, I was here a couple of years ago. Went really well. So we'll see what happens today. But no pressure. But before we start, just to really set the ground rules down, there's no right answers in this. How I work is, I work with you guys, and this workshop's going to require a lot of you guys talking, as a lot of people just like sink back in their chair and hide a little bit. We'll expect a lot of you guys talking in front of the big group and also talking to each other. So I don't know how well you guys know each other. I know you've only done one thing prior to this a couple of weeks ago, so we'll see how that goes. But there are wrong answers in this workshop. And the wrong answers are only real if you tell me what you think I want to hear. And it's wrong because it's boring and it's not what you really think. And that's just a waste of everyone's time. So if you're being honest, even if you agree or disagree with what I'm saying, great. Tell me why you agree, tell me why you disagree. It's about having a discussion here. Is that cool? Sweet. So leadership is what we're doing. Authentic leadership. Leadership's one of those words that gets thrown around a lot. It can mean a lot of things. It can mean a whole lot of nothing. So just to establish the groundwork, and for this you're not going to need pens and paper or anything like that. You can have them there if you do want to doodle around and jot some notes or draw pictures and stuff. Just thinking what I would normally draw in that situation. Still haven't really evolved from high school in some ways. So yeah, you don't really need pens and papers for this. But when you hear the word authentic leadership, what are the things that pop out for you guys? What's front of mind? Yeah. Genuine leadership. Yeah. What else?
Like an authority kind of perspective.
Yep.
Like more human.
Yep. Yep.
Showing by example.
Yeah. Showing by example. What else? Honesty. Yep.
Has followers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Has followers. What else?
Empathy.
Empathy. Yeah. So who then in your life would you say is a good leader? Let's go straight into it.
I think my current boss is a great leader.
Yeah. Why your current boss?
Because we're all aware of the purpose of why we come to work every day.
Yeah.
But he takes an individual approach to understand what drives each of the people within the team to deliver that purpose as a collaborative
Yep.
effort.
Yep. Great. Perfect. Do you guys know everyone's names in here? I just assume. No, sweet. What's your name?
I'm Michelle.
Michelle. Sweet. Yeah. I was just like, I'm assuming, but I just thought I'd check. So from now on, when you do speak, just throw your name out just to accelerate that process for you guys. Thank you very much. What else? Who else is a good leader in your life?
My soccer coach.
Yeah. Tell us about your soccer coach.
Well, he knows what he's doing, and he's just takes the time to explain everything to everyone, and just gives everyone like an equal kind of go.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm Rachel, by the way.
Rachel, perfect. Beat me to it there. Good stuff. Someone else.
I've got a friend who's 80. She's a retired registered nurse, and she's just an amazing person. She's just full of wisdom and guidance, and she's a great listener, and she's always seems to have the right thing to say.
Yep, absolutely. Have some great stories, I would imagine.
Tim, one of my old mates, he's not in any particular leadership roles or anything like that, but he's just able to get people to openly communicate with him and follow him, and he's just very charismatic and real,
Yep.
and people relate to him.
Yep.
So, I see him as a leader, even though he's not.
Yep. And that's the thing. So leadership, you don't have to have a title. A title is great. Title doesn't automatically mean you're going to be a leader, regardless if it says manager or what. So you can be a leader without having a title. And sorry, I didn't grab your name before.
Michelle.
Michelle.
Yeah, my name's Ash. I have a friend who I would say is wouldn't want anyone to think of him as a leader, but he's so genuine to everyone and so universally liked that people just gravitate towards his ideals when he speaks.
Yeah. Great. One more. Yep.
Hayley, my best friend works in a position that he actually trains prisoners, would you believe, in minimum security to teach them a trade qualification whilst they're doing time.
Wow. Cool.
Not a leadership position, but good.
Yeah, absolutely. What made them, and you may not even have the answer for this, but what made them want to do that?
It was all about just giving them a second chance. So a lot of these guys are, and they're all male orientated. It's not being sexist, just the way that it is at the moment. It was all about, there were quite minor offences, bad backgrounds, things like that, and just to give them a chance in life. That's what it was. So they got some trade qualification guys into the roles, and they come out with a Cert 1, but it's a start.
Better than nothing. Yeah, very cool. All right. That's actually inspired me to do something a little bit different. So I do have like a set run sheet when I run things, but that's more what I like to think of as a safety net. But that's inspired me to go in a different direction. So what I want you to do when I say go, you're going to stand up. You're going to move the chairs to the side, and then you're just going to stand in a circle for me. Obviously, there's a lot of Easter eggs there, so feel free to scoff some down or just move them to the side. So what I want you to do is, in silence, just quickly scan around the room and pick out 2 or 3 people who you haven't spoken to yet, or who you've spoken to very, very minimally. It should be very easy if you've only done one session before today. Cool. Now everyone take one step forward. Go. It's like, what's going to happen next?
Is this a circle pit?
Yeah. I'm just gonna- When I say go, I want you to partner up with one of those people. Now, there's two things that will happen here. There'll be the people who will go forward and try and grab that person, and there'll be the people who will stand there being, holy shit, what am I going to do here? What if no one picks me? Etc., etc., etc. And I'm not saying you have to do one or the other, just be aware of it. Just don't run into each other. So as quickly but as safely as possible, partner up with someone, ready, set, go. I'm not sure of numbers. There might be an odd number or a group of three. Perfect. Thank God for that. That would have been horrible if there was odd numbers. All right. Next thing, make sure you've introduced yourself. And what I want you to do now is find another pair and form a group of 4. Again, I haven't calculated numbers. All right, we have a group of 6. Let me just have a look around.
Pinpoint us where we're going to go.
You guys go here. Okay, sweet. Now you can return to your chairs in your group. So grab a chair and just form a small circle with your group. And it has to be a small circle with your group, not all sitting in a line. You don't have to face the front. Doesn't matter. Just make sure you and your group are in a circle. So make sure you introduce yourselves if you haven't done that already to the big group. Alrighty. So this is where we sort of freestyle a little bit. I'm a big believer in that the first, absolute, most foundational part of leadership is knowing yourself. That whole know thyself thing is one of the, like, you see that around, you hear that around, but for me, that's the absolute foundational part of being a leader. So a lot of this next hour and 35 minutes is not going to be, let's talk about this theory and this concept of being a leader, blah, blah, blah. It's about you guys me asking you questions, you guys asking yourselves questions, and just sort of unlocking things and seeing what happens from there. So shit could get a little bit weird in the next hour and a half, all right? Just roll with it. I've done more of these than I can even remember. There'll be times where you might find you're really loving something. Ask yourself, why are you loving it? There's going to be times where you find yourself absolutely hating what's happening. Ask yourself why. And there'll be moments where you're so terrified and uncomfortable. I guarantee you that will happen to at least a couple of you in here. Yeah. Oh. Ask yourself why. So if you're not sure, if you're feeling something, ask yourself why and where that comes from. Why is that feeling there? Why is that a thing? Why is that thought there? All right, so at the absolute foundation, every time you feel something in this, just go back to why. All right, so we're going to do now, this was inspired by, sorry, what was your name? Who spoke? Hayley. So quite a few years ago, I did a workshop at a maximum security prison in Victoria, Port Phillip Prison. And it was actually Jim Steins who I was spoken about. Like, he would run them on his own for quite some time, and the prison called him up and they're like, hey Jim, can you come and run this workshop for our youth division there? Like, it was an adult prison, so the youth division is, late teens to mid-20s, just more the younger people. And Jim had just taken on the presidency of the Melbourne Football Club. He was also running the Reach Foundation, and he was the managing director of a childcare company. So he was a pretty busy dude. Don't know how he did it. And he said no. So the only way that he'll do it is if he brings along a couple of the people who are running the programs within Reach and in the adult space, so people like myself and a few others. And the prison people freaked out about that. They're like, well, it's a bit of a security risk having all these extra people in there, but eventually they relented. So we rocked up there. You had to fill out, I'm just going to assume that most of you have not been in a maximum security prison. You know, you might have been there to visit someone, whatever, or done some work in there, or been a guest maybe, but I'll just assume no. So when you go, it's not just as simple as rocking up. It's not like rocking up here where you just sort of like, you know, say good day to the person at reception and make your way around. You got to fill out a lot of paperwork before you go there. You got to prove your identity. You got to prove that you're not going to know anyone in the workshop, any of the inmates. Like no police, like issues in the past, anything like that. If any of those things came up, weren't allowed to be there. So we all rock up. Everyone's a little bit tense. There's a group of about 5 or 6 of us, and we rock up. Eventually, we're in a room quite similar to this, actually. And all the inmates were just putting chairs in circles, and then we got into groups of about 4 or 5. And it was pretty awkward at this point. Like, we were terrified of them, and these guys were all pretty unsure of us. And so Jim's like, all right, go around the circle, just find out a bit about the people in your group, just have a conversation. Now, this workshop was being held on a Monday morning. What do you think the go-to was for people to break the ice? Whoa, what'd you do on the weekend? Do you think that worked? No. It was like, what'd you do on the weekend? Nothing. Sat in my cell. Cool. So like a few people like had I wonder what they're in for, but no one was willing to ask that question. Everyone was a little bit too scared to know what the answer was. So what happened was, it was just awkwardness. Everyone was sitting there, not really saying anything, looking at the roof, looking at the floor, heaps of nervous laughter, like over the top nervous laughter. And then Jim picked up on, he's like, all right, bad question, just go around the group and describe your perfect day. And that's when perceptions started to completely change, from us to them to us, even, you know, them to them. Because these guys said things that you and I would take for granted. Guarantee. One guy in my group, all he wanted to do was take his shoes and socks off and stand barefoot on grass. That's all he wanted to do. He didn't care if it was for 5 seconds or for an hour. He just wanted to have that sensation. One guy wanted to go to the pub, have a chicken parmigiana, have a pot, and just that was it. One guy was in Victoria, so he wanted to go to MCG, wanted to watch a game of footy. He's like, oh, I could go watch a game of AFL or I could Boxing Day test. Didn't care as long as it was at the MCG. That was his thing. He wanted to go to the G, and he wanted to do it with his dad. And one guy wanted to see his daughter ride a bike because he'd been in, before she was born, etc. But then my friend Tom had this really intense experience in that everyone in his group was answering it except one guy. And I kind of related to what you said, like, well, why are you in here? He's like, you guys are probably going to think it, but you're not going to ask me, so I'm going to tell you why I'm in here. And this guy told a story about how he grew up in the next suburb from my mate Tom, and went to just the local high school. Wasn't great at school, wasn't bad at school, just sort of floated along. Was really good at sport. That sort of B plus A sort of student. But really like he was a sports guy. Had a girlfriend throughout school. They stayed together after school, got married, had 2 young kids. After the second child, the marriage fell apart, and so he stayed in the house, and then she went with the kids and lived with her mum in the same suburb, and he would see the kids every other weekend, which is a pretty common setup when that happens. But because they went to the same school, same area, they had a lot of the same friends, and he started hearing from mutual friends how his kids weren't really the priority for his ex-wife anymore, how they weren't being treated well. Not being fed consistently or bathed consistently, and she was having a lot of parties there, and the new friends weren't a great influence. So he'd call up to try and find out what was going on, and she'd deny it. He'd call up, she'd deny it, and that pattern kept happening. And so his thing was he wanted increased custody, so his plan was to rock up there unannounced and take photos of the living conditions. He thought if he did that, then he could show that to the lawyers and he could have the kids. So he rocks up there, which he wasn't supposed to do unannounced, and knocks on the door. His former mother-in-law answers the door and you're not supposed to be here, and he's like, I want to see my kids, and escalate, yell. One of his kids is watching, his grandma and his dad having this big yelling match at the front. Starts crying. He pushes past this woman to get to his kid, but he pushed her. She fell backwards and hit the back of her head like on the hallway table where you'd chuck your car keys, and died. Life sentence. Now, I don't know if that story is 100% how he said it happened. Chances are it's probably not. He probably put a little bit of mayo on it at different points. But the thing that was killing this guy, he knew that he'd done the wrong thing, and he knew that he needed to do the time for it. But what was killing him was his kids would not know who he really was and what he stood for. They'd just know these bad things about him, but not actually him. And I remember driving home after that workshop. And I was driving to a company, I was running a workshop, and it was like a call center type situation, 80 people in there. These people would sit in rows, they'd sit next to each other Monday to Friday, and they didn't know anything about each other. They might as well have been working on their own, working remotely, even though they'd been there, some of them, for years. And just how often do you actually take the time to get to know people? Really get to know people beyond the email signature, beyond the titles that they have, where they work, but get to know them as a person. So that's what we're going to do now for the next little bit. I'm just going to fire out questions, and you guys will just go around the circle and answer those questions as honestly as you possibly can. So the first question is the same one that Jim started off once he realised that just to have a conversation was a terrible idea, is describe your perfect day. And go into detail. Don't just say, go to the beach. That's not enough detail, okay? What beach would you go to? Who would you go with? What would you do at the beach? Would you just lie there on the sand, read a book? Would you go for a surf? Would you swim? Would it be local? Would it be far? What would you eat? Etc., etc. Go into detail. So turn to your groups now. Make sure you introduce yourself if you haven't already, and describe your perfect day. Go.
But I'm Tim from Matt. Perfect day for me would be with the family on a family holiday to Japan. I've been there before with my brother, went skiing, but I think having the kids experience that would just be that next level again. It's just beautiful, their culture and scenic and landscape, and everyone's so polite and everyone's so lovely. I want to go back.
Question. If you were to have a dinner party, 3 guests, dead or alive, doesn't matter, famous, not famous, doesn't matter, who would you pick and why? Oh, it is tough. Okay, I'll give you a little bit longer for this one. So again, if you've answered either the first or second question, you're ruled out of answering this question, unless your group decides it was really, really worth sharing. Love to hear from a couple.
So Nick, I said I would have Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, because they're both mates and are going to be really fun.
Are they going to be an X-Men character as well? Or?
No.
Okay, so yeah.
I'm more of a Star Trek.
Yep.
But also bring my mum, because she would also enjoy
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Great.
Hi, I'm Michelle. My three people were, first one was Albert Einstein. Most of the things I probably wouldn't even understand what he was talking about, but he's just such an incredible person. If you've ever read any of his stuff, just on a pure, personable, moral level of the way he thinks and how society should be and how we should treat each other and that type of thing. Just, yeah, amazing. I could listen to him for hours. And the other two people were my parents because they both passed away, so
Yeah.
I'll have to see them again. So.
Sorry.
Hey, Ryan, I'm Andrew. I said that I'd have Michael Jackson come to the party, so 100% think he's like a great entertainer, and I just think it'd be really cool to have him there. Another one was going to be either Ricky Carmichael or Chad Reed, so right into motocross and supercross, not very good at it at all myself, but really admire what those guys do, so have one of them. And then possibly Steve Jobs, so just really admire sort of how ambitious he was and that, and how driven he was, and I guess a bit of a visionary.
Great. Cool. Someone from that group?
I'm Chanel. So mine, I only got to say two, but I'll take my third one as well. My first one was Donald Trump, just like such a polarizing character, and I'd like to meet him in person without the media and everything that's in the middle. My second was Hitler, just to kind of, it's been so long since everything that he made happen. And I think that would be like really interesting to hear his actual take on what happened. And my third would be Kanye West, equally polarizing and kind of just comical to interact in person.
Jeez, that would be some dinner party. Yeah, cool. Well, doesn't Trump only eat Maccas? So probably pretty limited. Yeah. Actually, before I get to that, what's happening in the room right now? What have you noticed that's different? Yeah, a bit more relaxed. Go.
saying things a lot quicker.
Yeah. There's no more like awkward silence, or it's not as. Yeah.
It's personal.
Yeah. Okay, so we're starting to scratch the surface a little bit more. And a lot of things happen for individuals when the conversation starts to become a little bit more honest. So again, I just want you to go back to tracking why you're having that reaction. Some of you notice I'm writing just words randomly up on the whiteboard. So most of the time it'll be things that you guys say that really stick out to me. But the last one that I've written up there is courage. And I want that to be front of mind as we sort of go towards the home stretch of this workshop. And when I say courage, I'm talking about the original definition of the word, which actually means from the heart. And so for the rest of this workshop, it's not all going to be talking, but just really have that idea of courage being front of mind.
I'll party for a week. All right, 16.
And just fill up the space there, so I won't be in the circle, so fill up the circle. This is an interesting circle. How did you guys find that last sort of half hour or so? What stood out?
Openness?
How personal it was.
Yep.
It's actually quite enjoyable to be able to talk to people and not say, "Hi, I'm Ash. Where do you work? What do you?"
Yeah.
The temptation for me, who hates that, is to always walk up to people and say, "Hi, I'm Ash. What's the thing you're most passionate about in life?" But often the response you get is,
Yep.
"This guy's a freak." So
Absolutely. So we just completely remove all that sort of small talk out of the equation.
Easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Explain.
Please explain.
Yeah.
I don't know, just kind of like everyone, I guess, at first was kind of just not wanting to say anything, and then yeah, eventually kind of got easier and easier to kind of be a little more open.
Yeah.
Because everyone else is being more open.
Yep. Absolutely.
You could say building each question.
Yeah.
Everyone got a little bit more
Yeah,
honest with
communication
their
and,
question
yeah.
with their answer.
Your understanding of each person and their life and
Yeah. Absolutely. And you know, like, not everyone loves talking. For some people, the idea of having to verbally communicate, like honesty, is absolutely petrifying. And I totally get that. I totally understand that. What I'm going to get you to do now is going to be done in complete silence. Okay, so we're going to flip it so that it's no talking, but still that idea of courage, I want that to be front of mind. So how this will work is, I'll say a statement. If you agree or if it applies to you, and you can interpret that however you want, but if it's real for you, whatever I say, then you'll just walk to another part of the circle. If it's not real for you, you just stand there, but to be done in silence. So I'll do a couple of practice ones. This is one of those things where everyone, regardless of age group, says, yeah, I get that, and then the first one, they mess it up. So first one, cross the circle if you are wearing black shoes or predominantly black shoes. And so that was really good for a lot of things there. So what tends to happen is people will just go and bunch up a little bit. So once that happens, just, you know, spread the circle back around a little bit. There's also going to be the temptation to talk once you cross the circle, okay? Because I won't even tell you. Why do you think that happens? Yeah, go. Yeah. Validate, yep. So for this next bit, don't worry about manners. You're all doing the same thing here. And don't worry about having to validate. Okay, so just get there, be in your own process. Okay, really track what you're thinking and why you're thinking it. Okay, so the interesting things there. So think, why would it be manners for you and why would it be about validation? Okay, so ask yourself why and where that comes from. So all the questions, they're going to be very different. Some will be very work orientated, some will be very life orientated, and see how this goes. At some point I might throw it over to you guys as well. Across the circle if at any point in this workshop you've been a little bit nervous. Across the circle if you're excited about this opportunity with HunterNet. Across the circle if there's somewhere you'd rather be tonight. Flip side of that, cross the circle if being here is the best place for you to be tonight. So always refill the circle. Cross the circle if there is someone in your life that looks up to you. Cross the circle if there's someone in your life that you take things out on. Cross the circle if you avoid conflict. Cross the circle if you love conflict. Cross the circle if you bitch about other people at work. Cross the circle if you've publicly acknowledged someone for something good that they've done at work. Cross the circle if you feel like a bit of an imposter at work. Cross the circle if you don't see yourself in this career in 5 or 10 years from now. Cross the circle if you love your job. Cross the circle if your job is an escape for you. Cross the circle if you don't know why you're part of this program. So now you guys have been going really well with this. The thing that, from my perspective, that's been the most impressive is when there's only been 1 or 2 people crossing the circle, because it's a really tough thing to do. So I just really want to acknowledge the people who have done that. From now, I'm actually going to hand the keys over to you guys. So this is where you guys will say the statement, but it has to be something that's real for you. So you can't say something that's not your own experience. And again, I just want you to put that idea of courage front of mind. So I don't want to hear stuff like, oh, cross the circle if you've got a collared shirt on. We're past that.
Hands over to you.
Cross the circle if you've been arrested before.
Good start.
Cross the circle if you've ever thought your job's too hard and you just wanted to walk away.
Cross the circle if you spent more time focusing on work than your personal life. cross the circle if you feel guilty or conflicted about the fact that you chase money over other pursuits.
And everyone just take a breath. So let's do just a bit of a pulse check. What's going through people's minds right now?
Enjoying the level of engagement that
Mhm.
everyone had, like the real engagement.
Yeah.
Been good.
I had to really think if I loved my job or not.
Yeah. Was that a surprise for you?
If you asked me 6 months ago, I would have ran. But
Yeah.
today I had to fight it.
Yeah.
Decision, and I suppose as a leader, sometimes you have to make a decision if you know, like to cross the circle, am I 100% sure that's the correct answer, but I'm going to back myself even though I have doubts?
Mm. Absolutely.
And other people are going to judge me, seeing me do this, and go, well, that's what she thinks, even though in my mind I may not be 100%,
Yeah.
but you're wanting to give them one illusion. But
Mm. Sure.
The simplicity of a yes or no question, but what else is going on in
Yeah.
the thought process?
Absolutely. What are some of the things that stood out for you?
Whenever anybody says something, I was like, yes, that's like such a true thing, like that's a real thing. And then I still struggle to think of something, but every time someone says something, I was like, yes.
As cliche as it sounds, like never judge a book by its cover.
Learning a few things about the people in here. Yeah. Absolutely. And so, I think just to answer your point, like courage, the full definition is from the heart despite fear. So it takes a lot, even if you're not 100% sure if you're going to be the only. It's quite a challenging thing if you're going to make a statement. You have no idea if other people are going to cross the circle in that moment. And you might think it's like everyone thinks that. You have no idea. And so I just really want to acknowledge the amount of courage that can take to do that. Even if you didn't say something, just the act of walking, because you don't know if it's just going to be you and that one person. It's a really courageous thing. So I don't have a huge amount of time. We've got half an hour or so to go. So we're going to do something again, very different. So what I want you to do is just to grab a chair, and you don't have to be facing the front, but I don't want you guys like sort of all around in a, actually no, circle will be fine actually. Just grab your chair and just put it into a circle and then sit on said chair. Perfect. All right. So if you've got anything like on your chair, just chuck them under the seat. This is going to be easiest part of the workshop. This is something that I do a lot in my work. It's called a sensory. It's kind of like a movie in your mind. Some people call it visualization, some people call it meditation, some people call it hippie bullshit. For me, it's like a movie in your mind. So in a minute, I'm just going to get you to put your head down and close your eyes. And I'm going to just go through a story. And I'll play some music in the background. It's not music you'd hear on the radio. It's just an instrumental track, just to help with that. Now, totally understand that this isn't everyone's cup of tea. So with this, If you're finding yourself like wanting to open your eyes, again, go back to why. If you're finding yourself freaking out a little bit, go back to why. And if you're really struggling, all you got to do is just focus on my voice. Any questions? Sweet. So where you are, I'll just get you to close your eyes and just drop your head. And in a minute I'll chuck some music on in the background. But for this first part, I just want to test your imagination. So how this will work is I'll ask a whole lot of questions. I'll take you through a big story. You'll all hear the exact same things, but you'll all think something different. Normally when I say that, people are a bit confused. So if I said, imagine yourself standing, looking at the front of the place you live in, you'll all think something different, unless you all live in the same house here with each other. Just a bit weird. All right, so I'll ask a lot of questions, I'll say a lot of things, just follow my voice, answer everything in your own mind. You don't have to speak out or anything like that. So just to test your imagination, I just want you to get an image in your mind of the whiteboard from the front of the room, the one that I've been using intermittently throughout this workshop. Just have that clear in your mind. And if you're not sure, perfect. Use your imagination, get creative. Maybe the last time you looked at this whiteboard, there was stuff written on it. If so, what was written on it? What colour's the text? How big was the handwriting? Get all this stuff really clear in your mind right now. Is it a new whiteboard? Is it an old whiteboard? Is there a ledge for me to put the whiteboard markers in the eraser? Is it a wooden frame, metal frame? Is it one of those fancy whiteboards where you can print directly off it? Just get it really clear in your mind. And I want you to imagine that you're standing in front of this whiteboard, you have a marker in your hand, and you just start writing on this whiteboard. And what you're writing are all the things that are going through your head right now. So if you're sitting there thinking, what the hell is Jez talking about? Then what the hell is Jez talking about gets written up on this whiteboard. What colour texter are you using? How big is your handwriting? Get all this stuff clear in your mind. Every other thought that goes through your mind gets written up on this whiteboard. Maybe something about this workshop, maybe you love it, maybe you hate it, maybe something someone said's really stood out to you, maybe thinking already to what you're going to do when you get home, maybe thinking about dinner, maybe thinking something random that makes no sense whatsoever. But you just keep writing and writing and writing and writing. Pretty soon this whiteboard's completely filled with text. So all your thoughts are filling it up. You just keep writing and writing. You can't even see the white anymore. It's just random scribble. And when it gets to that point in your mind, I just want you to freeze. You pick up the eraser and you start wiping this whiteboard clean. Pretty soon, this whiteboard is completely white, it's completely clear, it's completely free of thought, just like your minds are right now. So I want you to imagine that you're sitting in a really comfy chair. Maybe it's one of those armchairs where the legs kick out. It's just really, really comfy. Maybe it's a chair that's in your home. You just feel yourself sinking right into it. And there's a big screen in front of you and it just starts flickering. And the lights dim and you're just kicking back in this chair and you can tell that there's a movie about to start. And that's when your name appears on the screen. And what happens over the next few minutes is you witness almost like a highlights package of your life up until this point. So all the amazing things that you've done, stuff from when you were a kid, throughout school, your friends, close friends, those key moments that really shape you. first love, first kiss, first heartbreak. All these things start appearing on this screen. What are some of the things that you would see? What are some of those highlights for you? And it goes to the moments that haven't been so easy. Those moments of challenge. The moments of real despair. The moments where you've had to question who you are and what you're about. What are those moments? What are the moments where you've had to really dig deep? And who was with you in those moments? Maybe you did it on your own. And what impact have all those moments had on you, on the person that you are today? As this movie keeps going, it sort of hits this point where it just starts flickering. And all the images become a bit of a blur because it's reached present day and all the rest of the footage hasn't been filmed yet. So if you could look ahead, what sort of life do you want to be living? What sort of moments do you want to fill that movie with? And it's a morbid thought, but as this movie keeps going, the moments get blurry and blurry and blurrier, and then it just stops, you know, gravestone, your name on it. But it's got the day you were born, and then the next little bit is that dash. And that dash is the most important part because that's the life that you lived. It's not about the birth date, it's not about the end date, it's about that dash. So how do you want to fill that dash? The great thing about life is you can be anyone that you want. But do you actually want to be somebody? And who is that somebody? And how do you want people to remember you? So that if someone else was going to look at that movie, what sort of person would they see? So as you're sitting there with your eyes closed, I just want to say, so far you guys have been phenomenal. Shown a lot of courage, been really honest. This is sort of the final big test in this. Because what's going to happen is in a minute, I'm going to get you to open your eyes. And you're going to come up the front and stand where I've been standing for the majority of this workshop. And you can tell the people in this room how it is that you want to be remembered, the sort of person you want to be. And, you know, there's a bit of emotion in the room, and that's fine. It's really, really normal. The definition of emotion is energy in motion. It means you're a human being. So when you're ready, I just want you to open your eyes and come back into the room, head up. and unless you're standing here, it's going to be complete silence. So whoever wants to go can go.
There's two characteristics that I'd like to be remembered by. One is being principled and like intensely principled in a way that people say that guy really understood what mattered to him and was willing to live for it. And strangely enough, I've forgotten what the second one was.
So what are those things that matter to you?
That matter to me. It's more conceptual in that an idea, if you have an idea, that you're willing to live for it. The specifics of the ideas. It's, I suppose, bound in that is the courage and the truth, so that you don't do things or say things to placate people or to kind of that don't resonate with yourself. You just do your thing. It's going to upset a few people. That's okay.
Awesome. Really good.
Mine's very easy. I just want to be remembered as a loving, easygoing, caring guy that people feel trusted to talk to, and yeah.
Why is trust important for you?
I guess it should be important to everyone to have that understanding and connection that if someone tells you something that it's probably confidential, it's probably really important to them, and if I told someone something really personal, I wouldn't want them throwing it around the room either. So it's just something I'm really, emotional about, trust.
Just a nice person who cared for other people and liked to have a good time, have fun, have a laugh.
And so like I really want to unpack what people are saying, so that like what does a nice person look like for you? Because my version might be totally different.
Just cares about people in life. Yeah. Treating other people.
And why is that important for you?
Because that's how I want to be treated. Yeah.
I suppose how I would want to be remembered is, it links into what Philip said, is someone who was kind and caring to other people, and someone who was willing to put other people first ahead of themselves. And then going back to what I was thinking about during that process is sort of looking back on my life. The thing that stood out is, there were times when I was alone, but the thing that stood out is the other people in my life, so friends, family, co-workers, and so going forward, you want those people to be a big part of it, and you want to treat those people, treat them well.
I don't have kids yet, but I would like to be known like as a loving and caring dad one day. Mainly because I feel like my dad was ever that. There was a lot of missed opportunities I think he had. I'd like to just learn from his mistakes, I guess.
What has that taught you growing up like that?
Don't miss opportunities that are right in front of you, I guess, and be aware, more aware, and don't miss any opportunities is the main thing, I guess.
So what's your name again?
Nick.
Hands up if you can relate to that, having a parent who wasn't really around. So I know I
the relationship like with your mum?
Well, I've lived with her most of my life, and I think she definitely steered me in the right direction. And I use this as an example of who I respected the most, and that was my mum, because there's definitely a large contrast between my half siblings that lived with my dad and the ones that lived with my mum, and I wouldn't say that we're better than them in no way, shape, or form. Would I say that? I just feel we're going down a better road, and morally steered in the right direction, I guess. And I would like to take what I learned from her and apply that to being a really good dad and being there for my kids one day.
Awesome, man. It's beautiful. Really good.
So I'd like to be remembered for being ambitious, driven and inspirational, because they're sort of how I just generally want to live my life. So I want to strive to do things that others potentially don't see me doing, or feel that it's not worth the squeeze to do. So have that ambition and that drive for it, and then by doing that inspire other people to do that as well, or chase what they really want in life to feel fulfillment. I guess the things in life don't pass up any opportunity that's right in front of you.
Awesome. Where does that ambition come from? You reckon?
I don't know, it's just something I guess I've all, I just feel in myself that I want to do. So I guess other people around me haven't been ambitious, and I feel that they potentially missed opportunities. So just coming from that, it's something that I've just identified that I didn't want to be like. So
Yeah. Awesome, man. Really good.
I want to be remembered as being a good father and putting my children first. I think it's easy to, I guess, to get distracted by everything else that is in life. And I want my children to remember me as someone that spent time with them and I guess steered them in the right direction, as well as also treating other people and helping other people to get to where they want to go, and not achieving my goals by stepping on other people, I suppose.
So I'd like to be remembered as someone who was respectful for others and who would drop anything they were doing if they were able to help in a particular situation, and also the ability to motivate somebody around me to do something that they think is impossible or stupid, because I've done that up until this point, and I've pushed a lot of people into things they never would have done, and I don't want to stop doing that.
Who's done that for you?
I guess I came from a small country town, and my parents pushed me to do a lot of sport, and reasonably talented. We had a good group of team, and we made some really good rep teams as kids. And it came on for me, and then I was like, well, if I can do it, then anyone can do it. So surely a bit of motivation won't stop you from getting out there.
I guess I want to be remembered as a good father and a good husband, and also generous. My grandfather, who died when I was 9, just was so inspiring, and he's at his funeral, I remember my dad said he'd take his shirt off his back to anyone, and that's always stuck with me. Really like to live by his example.
So how do you do that now? Show your generosity.
I'm always broke because I keep giving my kids all the money. I guess my other two siblings haven't been as fortunate as I with career, and they have needed some help financially. So, and I try and help out my parents as much as I can as well. Not that they need much, but yeah.
Great. Really good.
So I have two things that I would like to be remembered by. One is always trying to achieve new goals and not just like big ones. Like at the moment, I'm trying to run 10 kilometres. So just kind of not letting life just float by, but kind of seizing the day and doing things and pushing yourself. And then also just the quality of my relationships with people as, just having those really close people kind of for life all around you.
Perfect. Really, really good.
Last one.
I found it quite interesting, like closing my eyes, I could vividly see like things that are going on. I've had 4 hours sleep since last night, I worked last night, so it could have been something to do with it. Well, I've got a very small group of friends and I kind of don't open up, and I'm very selfless with anyone that will come into my life, so I don't really think that possessions are the most important things in the world. I believe that, personal interaction, so someone that's selfless but is always there to help people. And obviously I've got 2 young daughters, so a 2-year-old and 5-month-old, and it was just, their face just kept flashing, and it was like trying to view them growing up and what they're going to be like. So I just want to be remembered, as their daddy essentially. So that's my why and why I push for everything. It's my girls and my family, and then obviously to be a selfless person that is always there for someone. So.
Alrighty. And I'll just get everyone to stand in a circle for me, please. I'd just love to hear a few thoughts from people. What stood out for you over the last 2 hours? We've covered a lot of ground, and I feel like that 2 hours has gone very quickly.
I was just saying that, like, if we compare this session to last week's or 2 weeks ago session, there was content in it, and you can't walk out the door, you know what the content was and sort of what the implications of that are for you. I feel like there's a lot to unpack out of this one. It's probably one that'll play in our minds for a while. It'll take a while to realise the full impacts of it, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something. You go.
Sorry.
I've been very vocal.
I think the whole analogy that you used, that little dash in the middle is what counts. And I've never heard that before. And you've got 2 dates, but that one dash is what matters.
Yeah. So make sure you can see me very clearly. I just want you to make a fist and just put your hand out like that. This is really simple. Just got to do as I say. Really simple. Just do as I say. You don't have to stand in a circle or anything like that. Just got to do as I say. So just want you to put your hand on your chin. Okay, this is your cheek. That's your chin. You're adults. You should know the difference between the two. But the moral of that, there's always one person who I guarantee will be like, no, I swear I did it. You can move your hands now. The moral of that is actions speak louder than words. You followed what I did, not what I said. And I said very deliberately, do as I say. I said it 3 times. Okay, so the takeaway from that is a gram of action is worth a kilo of words. So in the workplace, if you guys are put into these leadership positions and you guys are talking one thing, as soon as you do one act that goes against that, all the talk's worth nothing. So your actions are going to have to be the thing that drive you. From me to you, thank you so much for being here this evening. I really appreciate it. Sorry, I'm a little bit crook. Like to have been better, but at one point yesterday, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it at all. Before I get you guys to wrap up, like I said at the start, like we're a social enterprise. The Reach Foundation doesn't get any money from the government or anything like that. It's all individual and corporate donations. And one of the ways that we prove that our work is doing something is through evaluations. So I'm going to get you, just before you leave, to do that. Please do it before you go and have a drink or before you walk out the door. So it's a twofold thing. One is like, if it's good, we can show that the work we're doing is impactful. Flip side of that as well is that I will also gain a lot from this because it allows me to see where I can improve because I want to get better every single time. So it's a really quick link. It literally will take 2 seconds to do. Okay, maybe that's a slight exaggeration. It'll take a minute to do. Probably 30 seconds will be just writing that down. But please, before you leave, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18 people. So I'm hoping that by the time I get back to my hotel that there's 18 filled out evaluations. I cannot stress that enough, just how important that is for us. But please give yourselves a massive, massive round of applause because you guys have been absolutely fantastic.